One of the most important things for any great series to keep in mind in order to engage its audience is the tone that it presents. The tone of any series must always do justice to its plot and its characters. The fact is, every story demands a different tone, one that is unique to its own narrative. And that is what Hunter x Hunter does so well. A trademark of any good anime is to realize what kind of tone the story demands and to be faithful to it. There is a reason why animes like the Dragon Ball series, Attack on Titan and Naruto have been able to captivate their audience for so long. These animes realize what kind of tone they require to present and stick to it. But as good as these animes are, tonal setting is something that Hunter x Hunter in my opinion excels at, better than pretty much any other anime out there. Let's take a case in point. Let's talk about Naruto for a second. I know that a lot of people hate the filler episodes in Naruto, but those episodes are there for a reason. You see, as the series progresses, the threats and enemies that Naruto and his comrades face become more and more significant, to the point where it would seem downright out of place to set a lighter, more playful tone after a point. However, for any series that is actually looking for commercial success as huge as Naruto's, setting a constantly bleak and hopeless tone might end up driving away a portion of its really young audience. Of course, the more mature audience will always remain for the story and characters, but the younger audience also does present a large majority of any anime out there. As a result, to keep things from getting monotonous and keep the narrative feeling fresh and hopeful, the only way left for a series, especially one that is as long as Naruto, is to take the help of some filler episodes that will give the audience a break from the constant tension and seriousness of the series. And this is something that a lot of other animes do as well. But somehow, Hunter x Hunter does not need to do this. The question is how? How does Hunter x Hunter keep things fresh without ever relying on filler episodes? How does this series keep the action going without ever making the audience feel like the tone of the series is getting monotonous? The tone that you set for your story is crucial to earning as well as retaining your audience, because at the end of the day, anime is supposed to be an escape from reality for most of us, something that we can immerse ourselves into, and selecting the incorrect tone for your story can often lead to absolutely disastrous result. Ask Berserk 2016 if you do not believe me. If a series like Dragon Ball adapted a constantly and severely dark tone, it would immediately start driving away its fans, because that kind of tone would not do justice to the characters and the world building that the series has set up, and would feel completely out of place. And this tone is what Hunter x Hunter masters so completely that you get immediately and absolutely immersed into the story. There is one very distinct thing about Hunter x Hunter that I have seen in very few other series, and that is the way that it constantly switches its tone, shifting non-stop between a light-hearted and a darker tone. This is something that Naruto also does very well, but Hunter x Hunter does it far more explicitly and without being shy or ashamed about it. See, the thing with constantly shifting tone is that it can, and it will, in most cases, lead to a complete tonal inconsistency. I mean, think about it this way. You're watching Attack on Titan. Now, Attack on Titan definitely has its own fair share of funny, light-hearted moments, but for the most part, the series is pretty serious. Now imagine Attack on Titan deciding to adapt a completely different tone, one where it emphasizes much more heavily on the humor and funny moments. What would be the outcome of that? A completely disastrous tonal inconsistency. Not only would that tone look very inconsistent in relation to the story of Attack on Titan, but it will also be really difficult to take the threat of the Titans seriously when most of your characters are always joking around. So why does that not happen with Hunter x Hunter? How does Hunter x Hunter manage to constantly shift between a lighter and a very dark tone while never actually degrading the consistency of the series or making the threats any less dangerous? The answer can be found in just one word: impact. Each arc of Hunter x Hunter follows different stories. Sometimes it's just a hunter exam, and sometimes it's an entire city being massacred by a group of bandits. The impact that each arc has on the outside world of Hunter x Hunter is different. The Hunter exam arc is obviously just an introduction wherein the series sets up a lot of its characters, and hence to make these characters likable, understandably adapts a really light-hearted and fun tone. The second arc, that is the Heaven's Arena arc, is where things slowly begin to change. Hisoka feels like a legitimate threat, even more so because we know that none of our main characters are anywhere close to his level, and that is why it makes total sense how Hunter x Hunter adapts a slightly more serious tone for this arc. And now don't get me wrong, it does maintain the heart of its main characters and we get plenty of funny moments, but there are also some moments where you can see the gradual shift in the tone of the series. And I think it would be wrong to say that this arc has a dark or serious tone, because it really does not. The best way to describe it would be that at this point, Hunter x Hunter is basically shifting gears. It is getting ready for what's about to come in the next arc, and that is why the tone of this arc, while not exactly dark or serious, feels just slightly more sinister than the Hunter exam arc. And this is where the word impact comes into play, like I mentioned earlier. Both the Hunter exam arc and Hisoka's presence in the Heaven's Arena arc are isolated events. What I mean to say here is that whatever happens in the Hunter exam arc only has direct impact on the Hunter Association, at least in the short term. Also, once again, whatever happens between Gon and Hisoka in Heaven's Arena does not impact anything outside of Heaven's Arena. Everything in these two arcs are basically isolated events which do not impact the overall world of Hunter x Hunter on a large scale. It is the third arc of the series, the York New City arc, where we truly see Hunter x Hunter's dark tone on full display. The series does not pull any punches in this arc. Compared to the previous arcs, this one is definitely a lot more serious in terms of its tone, but never feels out of place somehow. And like I've been saying, a major factor for this is the word impact. The incidents in the previous arcs were relatively isolated and did not affect the world of Hunter x Hunter as a whole. However, in the York New City arc, we legitimately get to see an entire city getting absolutely massacred by the Phantom Troop. The scale of this event is huge, the impact is massive, the events of the York New City arc directly affect the overall world of Hunter x Hunter. My point is, Hunter x Hunter adapts a narrative structure wherein the greater the impact of a certain arc is on the overall world of Hunter x Hunter, the darker the tone gets. I would also like to bring attention to how the series changes protagonists depending on what arc is going on. While the first two arcs mainly followed Gon and Killua, as soon as the story shifted to a darker tone in the York New City arc, Kurapika became the protagonist, which makes a lot of sense because Kurapika's theme of revenge goes completely in line with the sinister tone of the York New City arc. And what's beautiful about Hunter x Hunter is that never really gets monotonous. It never takes itself too seriously, because a series like this does not need to. As soon as one dark and serious arc ends, we get some cool down time just to keep things fresh, and that comes in the form of the Greed Island arc. Once again, the word impact comes into play, as the events that transpire in the Greed Island arc are once again isolated to the Greed Island itself, and in no way do they affect the overall world of Hunter x Hunter outside of Greed Island. The point of taking on a serious tone during large-scale events and sticking to a lighter tone during isolated arcs or events is simple, yet very few animes out there are actually able to incorporate this narrative structure as efficiently as Hunter x Hunter. The series adapts a more serious and poignant tone during events that affect its large-scale world as a whole, because a tone like that helps to communicate to the audience that the threat that our protagonists are facing is actually significant and the audience takes the threat more seriously, while a lighter tone indicates that the threat at hand will have very little negative implications for our protagonists. It is a very subtle way to subconsciously communicate the seriousness of the current threat and situation to the audience. And this little trick plays out very interestingly in the Greed Island arc and the Chimera Ant arc. The tone of the Greed Island arc throughout its run was clearly meant to stay cool and light, never really venturing into the truly dark side of the series. And this was despite the fact that Genthru had killed hundreds of people and was essentially a mass murderer. However, in the very next arc, we see a complete tonal shift once again, as the tone shifts very quickly and suddenly. From the first episode itself, it is obvious that the tone of the Chimera Ant arc would, for some reason, be the complete opposite of the Greed Island arc. At first glance, this seems like a weird choice, considering that for all we know, Chimera ants are just a mutant species of ants. I mean, what are the chances that they could be more dangerous than someone like Genthru, right? Well, as it turns out, Hunter x Hunter makes no mistakes. The tone of the Chimera Ant arc was deliberately set in the way that it was, all in order to communicate to the audience that this arc was going to be brutal, and that unlike the Greed Island arc, this arc was not going to be an isolated event, and the implications of this arc could be long-term and severe, in a way that seriously impacts the world of Hunter x Hunter on a very large scale. And that is exactly what ends up happening. Meruem and his fellow Chimera ants turn out to be a threat to the entire world. A threat that must be eliminated because at this point, only one species can survive. It is kill or be killed. This arc makes us question what humanity truly means, and it makes us realize that humanity is not just confined to humans, and even makes us question at certain points if the characters that we have grown to love and adore throughout the series are actually any better than the monsters they are fighting. And so it makes absolute sense that as soon as the Chimera Ant arc ends and the election arc begins, the tone once again shifts. The threat has been eliminated and therefore the series no longer demands a dark or serious tone. Now don't get me wrong, the election arc was by no means a happy-go-lucky arc, but it serves the purpose of a cool-down arc to end the series, something that the audience truly needed after being witness to the Chimera Ant arc. At the end of the day, Hunter x Hunter has managed to create a formula to decide which arc demands what kind of treatment, and I think this is what the 1999 version of Hunter x Hunter was really missing. I love the 1999 version as much as the next guy, but to be honest, that version just ended up taking itself way too seriously. Maybe it was a genuine creative choice, or maybe it was an attempt to come across as more edgy and cool in order to connect with the younger audience, but the unnecessarily dark tone of the 1999 version, coupled with its overly dark color palette, does not do it any favor. The tonal shift that the 2011 version adapts, choosing its tone depending on the impact that any arc has on the overall world, is what makes the audience take the 2011 version much more seriously. Because for all the lightheartedness and fun, every once in a while we are reminded that no matter how good the world might seem and how hopeful our protagonists might be, there will always be some kind of threat looming over our lives. And this factor of uncertainty and shock, while still being able to maintain a sense of uniformity throughout the series, is what truly makes Hunter x Hunter a masterpiece. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, do not forget to leave a like and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. I hope you all have a great day. This is Instinctive Awareness signing out.